client onboarding, it's always one of those things. It's a very time-consuming process. There's tons of opportunity for repeatable process that's there. And it also seems to be an area, at least for most MSPs that I've encountered, that frequently have steps that just simply get missed because people fail to follow process. So to address that, we basically started with a form here that allows you to select the client that you like to work with. So in this case, I have a test project open for our organization right now. Once you select the org, you've got various tasks that we have built automation for to complete some of those different onboarding steps. So let's say, for example, I wanted to set up my agent deployment processes. So I click the action. I select the project ticket that's responsible for that particular item. And then at this point, it's a simple set up the GPO, target the location that we want to use, and optionally, you can create a download link with a fixed variable expiration date that you could use. So rather than the default 24 hours, you could extend that up to 90 days based on this workflow. So this is the form side. Once that is submitted, everything dumps into this workflow. So what we have is basically, we come through, we parse the information out of the ticket that we're working. We have a sub workflow here to update the project ticket status because there are no built-in actions already to manipulate project tickets. They're on a different endpoint than service tickets. So we've got that set up. And then we move into a decision tree. So all of these are evaluated based on the form input. So if you select the onboarding task to enable asset sync, then this is the process you're going to run, which runs into this sub workflow here. So we have just basically a simple sub workflow that, at least for us in our environment, we use direct SQL queries. We have error handling built into all of these. So at the end of each sub workflow, we dump a success state and an error message. Alternatively, if we have an error, we set that success state to false. And then we output those things through the sub workflow. So once we output those, we take the results for that sub workflow, and based on the results for those items, we determine what our ticket note will be. So if we're successful, great, we're successful, we close the ticket. If we're not successful, we note the specific error message from the action that actually failed. So the target for this process won't be me or my team. We're putting this into the hands of other engineers, other technicians. They're not going to be able to look at these things and immediately know where the problem occurred. So the error handling here allows us to know exactly where this step was, and at that point we can work to address it. So all of these include some of the basic core concepts like just simple HTTP calls or API calls. Others do full-on deployments like Cyber CNS. In this case, this sub workflow is going to reach out to Cyber CNS, and if the tenant doesn't exist already, it's going to create the tenant. It's going to grab all of the pieces of information that we need to set that up and deploy it to all of our devices. It's going to create service accounts as necessary and document those in IT Glue. And then, of course, we have all our standard error handling that we capture here. So that would be the entire workflow for the Cyber CNS deployment. We have similar concepts for line guard and things like that. But I think the one that I'm most proud of is agent deployment. So basically with this, we identify a domain controller on the network, and we find that Screen Connect session. And then we run a PowerShell script that actually builds the group policy that we would need for agent deployment and allows you to specify the target location for those agents.
That is awesome.
So the way that works, I'm sorry, that's OUs. So the way that works is basically a PowerShell script template that we have here. So we populate everything. Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't give us a lot of options to manipulate group policy through PowerShell. So what we were able to do is create the policy in one place, export that policy. So we have our backup ID for the policy we exported. And then we come down to this area, and we look through the scheduled task XML data and do pattern recognition. So we replace the pattern with our new location ID. So this is built off of the LabTech PowerShell module as well. And of course, clean up after ourselves. Again, output as much as we can so that we have all the error handling in place. And we move on to our next task. Unfortunately, I didn't get everything I wanted done in this workflow before this call. Other things came up. So I still have three placeholder items that are here. One, creating individual users. One, setting up the Active Directory plugin and automate, because we always forget to do that. And then another that will generate a report out of Active Directory so we can make recommendations on accounts that may need to be disabled or evaluate password policies and things of that nature. So I've started working on the creation for individual user accounts. The way this will work is it's going to reach out to our own domain controller, and it's going to basically query all of our security group memberships for our technicians. It'll cycle through each technician and create their account on the client's domain, and based on that person's role, associate the required permissions. And that's pretty much what this does in a nutshell.